Well, policing next. And are we about to see the end of rural bobbies? In fact, are we about to see the end of one of our police forces completely? Lincolnshire Police says the next round of budget cuts are so severe it will have a big impact on its ability to police the county and even threatens its existence as an independent force. Our political editor John Hess has been out on the beat with a local bobby to look at the pressures they're under.
Out on patrol in the third largest policing area in the country. That makes PC Nick Smith's patch in rural South Lincolnshire bigger than most.
This is the area outside of Grantham that circumvents it, is the area that I cover.
He calls at the local supermarket in Colsterworth. There's been a burglary in the village.
You all right there?
He's one of 1,100 police officers in Lincolnshire and trying to maintain a high-profile community presence that's increasingly stretched because of budget cuts. It's about to get more difficult.
When you cover 67 villages, you can't expect to see a police officer or a PCSO every day. You know, we will be there, but we can't be there every day.
Outside the Lincolnshire Police headquarters, a recent quote from the Prime Minister. All credit to Lincolnshire Police. They've managed to do more with less. Well, they take a slightly different view inside. Lincolnshire's Chief Constable Neil Rhodes checks the latest 999 calls into his force's control room. This week, he issued his own emergency warning to the Home Secretary Theresa May over future funding.
In 2 or 3 years' time, we will be facing a reduction of just over £10 million in our funding. And that's just simply impractical. It's a gap that we can't bridge. It will mean that this force is almost unsustainable.
It would mean 236 officers, over a fifth of its thinning blue line being cut, raising the prospect of having to merge with a neighbouring force.
The presence of a community beat constable in your area would be a rarity. You would almost never see a police community support officer. That's just simply not acceptable to our communities.
In response, the Police Minister, Mike Penning, said,
Her Majesty's Inspectorate of Constabulary recently found that forces can successfully manage to balance their books while protecting the front line and delivering reductions in crime. The government is already conducting a fundamental review of the way funding is allocated between force areas. This work is ongoing.
But is that enough to reassure people in Lincolnshire's rural communities and its market towns, such as Grantham?
The farmers have a lot of thefts, you know, with machinery and that. And it's all countryside round here, so I think we do need more police.
I think people need to feel safe walking around towns like Grantham.
In the Poland it's more dangerous place than here, so maybe that's why they would like to reduce the amount of policemen.
It's a big problem here, and I think something should be done to address it as soon as possible.
We would like a serious conversation with the Home Secretary about the future of this organisation. But we simply cannot shrink to the size that those budget cuts would mean.
Lincolnshire isn't the only police force to issue a funding warning, but its Chief Constable is the first to make those concerns so public to the Home Secretary.
He is indeed, and Neil Rhodes doesn't hold back on this, Heather. In his letter to the Home Secretary, he says in 2016-17 his force will be on the edge of viability. It couldn't be more stark.
No, and we all agree that what police forces need to do is look at the jobs that are coming into them and to work smarter. I mean, Derbyshire has got a fantastic new project on board, having a joint HQ with the fire service.
Well, Derbyshire have got their own problems, but this Chief Constable we're talking about in Lincolnshire says that they have done everything they have been told to do by the government in order to slim down. But now Neil Rhodes is saying that he's got nowhere else to go than to start reducing the police numbers even more by another 200. Every survey we have seen says that the public wants more bobbies on the beat.
Yes, I think the interesting question is he's done everything he's been told to do. He's a very senior man, paid an awful lot of money, and he has an awful lot of senior staff with him. Are they really not capable of thinking outside the box about what they need to do for the services? Yeah,
I don't think he was talking about capability. I think what he was saying that his resources are stretched.
Absolutely. So they need to think differently. They need to work smarter. I mean, is he doing a joint HQ with his fire and rescue? Is he doing call-ups, the call service with the ambulance service? There are all sorts of ways on the back office stuff they can save money. Has he really done all of that?
Basically, what Heather's saying here, Leonie, is that there is room to make more cuts. There are ways to find efficiencies.
It's working smarter.
But I think the thing is, that the important thing to remember is that in 2010, when they first looked at this, Her Majesty's Inspectorate of Constabularies said that it was perfectly capable for police forces to make 10% cuts without any impact on frontline policing. Any more than that would start to bite in. Your government came in and made 20% cuts straight away, and actually now they're talking about even more. So I know that, for example, we're looking at there's 23% cuts been made already, and we're looking at more cuts to come. And this is why not just Lincolnshire but other police forces are coming forward and saying this is just too hard now. I know Nottinghamshire have moved to Nottinghamshire have a proud record of 100% attendance at all call-outs, and they recently, what I'm hearing from police officers is that they're now no longer meeting that target. In fact, they've just they appear to be calling people back and saying and talking them through how they should do their own evidence collecting, and this is not policing as we know it, and this is not what people are expecting.
What I'm saying is that they're stretched to the max.
No, I get that. Crime has gone down more than 10%. We need to say well done to the police force. Everything you've done out there, doing local police policing, the PCSOs, they've got a fantastic good arrangement.
What we've seen is rural crime is rising. So places like Lincolnshire, places like parts of my patch, places like the edge of Newark are struggling.
Let's just hear now from the Police and Crime Commissioner, Alan Hardwick. Let's hear what he has to say.
I would like to think that we've given the government enough warning now, and it needs to be a very public warning so that they can take a long, hard look at the way that police forces throughout the country are funded and decide that, yeah, actually, we would rather not have any force face a financial precipice in 2016, 17, 18. What do you think the government should do? We just hope that the government does invite us to sit round a table, to talk to us, and to take us seriously.
Don't you need to bend the ear of the Home Secretary, Theresa May?
I believe what we are doing is right. So does the Chief Constable. So I'm sure to the vast majority of people in Lincolnshire who are listening to this, they don't want to see their force merge with another force. They don't want to see their force sacrificed. You can ring fence funding for health. You can ring fence funding for education. Nobody grumbles about that. But surely policing, law and order underpins all that.
So, John, some alarming comments from the police in your report saying that they could go out of business in 4 years. Do they mean this, or are they just trying to make a point?
Well, they're obviously very keen to make a point and make a very powerful point as well. But Lincolnshire's not alone. There are a number of mainly rural police forces that are in a similar position. Dorset, for example, Warwickshire, Bedfordshire, Cambridgeshire too. And I think the problem, and it was just highlighted there by Alan Hardwick, is that the Home Office, the police, isn't one of those budgets that's ring-fenced, unlike the NHS and education. And you've got this dilemma here between people's demand for community policing and all the rest of it with the pressure to reduce costs. And just to pick up one point that Heather mentioned, for example, backroom staff at Lincolnshire, it is actually run. It has been, in effect, kind of farmed out to S4G.
Yeah, OK. Well, you mentioned Derbyshire as well before, Heather, and Mick Creedon, the Chief Constable there, says in his 35 years of service, he's not seen cuts on this scale. They've lost 450 officers and expect to lose the same again. So it's not just Lincolnshire.
No, of course it's across the board, and we have to realise that the money has to be spent appropriately. And I think that the facts really do speak for themselves. If crime is down 10%, if you were running a business, you would say, where am I spending my money? We know there are issues on terrorism, particularly around our area. We have to be hard on that. We know there are issues on cybercrime. We have to be hard on that. But the truth is, other areas of crime are coming right down, and the business model needs to change.
She's got a point, Leonie, hasn't she?
We're also seeing some areas of crime rising, and a lot of that, the areas of crime that are rising are things like shoplifting, for example. We've seen shoplifting baby food and meat going up, and that's because people are struggling. And we're only going to see that as more and more the cost of living becomes tougher. We're going to see more and more of that.
And there's a wider issue also here, John, isn't it? Because the next round of cuts we're hearing could be just as bad as the last ones, if not worse.
Well, we heard this week from the Conservative leader Leicestershire, Nick Rushton, the next round of big cuts in a county like that. 700 jobs have already gone over the last 4 years. He is talking about an additional 700 jobs still to go. And he referred to the scale of the cuts being horrendous. Now, I don't want to be accused by the Chancellor of using hyperbolic language here, but this is coming from one of his own senior local government political leaders.
Let's face it, Leonie, Labour would still have to make cuts.
would still have to make some savings, but actually we've been going through a process of looking at a zero-based
savings or cuts?
review. Well, one of the things that savings would have to make, what we've said though is that we found some savings in terms of efficiencies, in terms of procurement, and also in scrapping police and crime commissioners, which would help save the jobs of the 1,000 police officers who are already set to go next year. So we've made that a priority for next year, and then we'll be looking to do things in a more sensible way as well in the future.
And Heather, Conservative council leaders are saying publicly that they're struggling. How many more cuts can our councils and public services take?
Well, what I want to look at for when we get the announcement next week on the support grant for local councils is the absolute step change that I'm looking for in fairer funding for the Midlands, because I think that traditionally we've been completely left behind. I was having a look at the police figures, and actually the rate support grant that the police got went up by a few £1 million to reflect the change into the fairer funding for the East Midlands councils, and so I'm looking for that. So there may be cuts, we don't know what they're going to be, the changes, but actually I think the East Midlands are going to do okay.
Well, let's hope she's right, John. It sounds a bit bleak though, a lot of people are saying, for the new year.
Well, let me give you this thought. Imagine Eric Pickles as Father Christmas on Wednesday.
Interesting image.
Yeah, he'll have the local government settlement. It'll be in a written statement. That's when he'll give details of what the settlement will be, and maybe there's something for the East Midlands and for those Midlands councils that are struggling.
Eric Pickles in a Santa hat. It's an image too much for me, John.